All right, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And again, my name is Bill Costarides. And my goal today is hopefully to talk about the markets that we trade. And it's more about when to trade than it is what to trade. I will tell you that Traders Den 24 is a 24-hour chat room, and we're quite proud of it as far as we know. It is the only 24-hour chat room that is staffed by moderators. Now, I'm not going to tell you that there's a moderator in there every minute of the day, but they're in there the majority of the hours. We have Harry, who starts at 8:30 in the morning, followed by Scott and John. And then we'll have, some other traders that pop in and out. And then I start at 5 o'clock in the Globex session, and that's what we're going to hopefully focus on today is the Globex, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but well, let me ask this question then. How many of you have traded in the Globex or after hours market? Now, this is not the market where you can trade equities after the U.S. market closes. This market's futures only. It opens at 5 o'clock Central Time. And while I'm on that subject of Central, all the times that I will refer to today are Central Time Zone. One, because I live in the Central Time Zone. It's just easier for me to do the math. But more importantly, the Globex is a product of the CME in Chicago, and the CME is in the Central Time Zone as well. So, one, how many of you have traded futures? And two, how many of you traded after hours in the Globex? Now, that market opens at 5 o'clock Central Time and trades till the U.S. opens in the morning. Okay, it looks like the majority of you have traded in the Globex. Some of you are familiar with it. Tim, you're not familiar with the market, or you've never traded the S&P in the Globex, but we're going to talk about, as I said, the best times, what I think is to trade. I've been in this business 37 years, and I was fortunate enough to become involved with the Globex when it first originated. And it was a joint venture between Reuters and the CME. And it was originally started in actually this slide's a little off. It actually started in 1990, and it was developed to accommodate currency traders because, as you can imagine, currencies, of course, trade around the clock. And as you can imagine, these currency traders are standing around on the floor, 24 hours. And during the day, I'm sure that it was profitable. But at night, it was really kind of quiet and slow, so they developed this electronic system. Now, most of the electronic platforms that you trade on today were developed or are an offspring, if you will, or evolved from the CME and this experiment between CME and Reuters. Now, just to show you how different it was then, and when I look back on it, it's amazing we survived it, is that you had to have a Globex terminal. It cost you a few $1,000s to have one. Of course, that is if you were approved by the Futures Exchange. You could only enter orders on this terminal. You couldn't use any other computer. And it cost about $1,000 a month to maintain it. There were probably maybe 24 originally in the country, so we all knew who had one and who was using them. And commissions were $25, and I'll say that again, $25 a round turn. You could trade originally all of the currencies. You could trade the big S&Ps only. There weren't any E-mini contracts. You could trade the bonds. You could trade gold. And that was pretty much it. Now today, if you have an account with a couple $1,000s in it, you have a computer with a platform, you can access literally any markets, anytime, anywhere in the country. You want to trade the Nikkei in Japan? You can. You want to trade the Hang Seng in China? You can. You want to trade the FTSE, which right now with Brexit seems to be garnering a lot of attention? You can. And so it's just amazing to me what this market has become. Now, the way I originally got involved is I see that someone's having trouble with sound. Is that just Rich, or is it overall? Can y'all still hear me okay? Okay. As I was about to say, oh, my puppy is really worked up today. I got a 3-year-old pound puppy, and she's just having a blast looking out the window. I apologize for that. Of all days, she decides today she wants to bark. Okay, it's the way it is, isn't it? But originally, the way I got involved as a portfolio manager, which is how I spent my days, I manage a few hundred millions of dollars in equities, and some nights I would go home trying to figure out a way to hedge those portfolios. And of course, the only way to do it in those days were with puts and options and calls, which I didn't consider to be a really pure hedge. And so when they developed the Globex, it got my attention. And so I thought I would look into it as a way to hedge the portfolios that I was working with. So that's how I originally started to follow this market. But then I was trying to find a way to short the Nikkei in Japan. I don't know if many of you remember, depending on how long you've been involved with the marketplace, there was a time, and I forget the exact year now, when Japan was blowing and going, and their Nikkei that's at 15,000 area right now is in the 41, 42,000 area. They were buying, real estate all over the world. They bought Rockefeller Center. They bought Pebble Beach, here in the U.S. and other very notable properties. And everyone thought the Japanese were going to take over the world. And then all of a sudden, deflation set in. Their market started to sell off. And as many of you know now, that market went from some 42,000 down to 7,000. And it wasn't one of these quick sell-offs. This happened over a period of years, and it sat in the 7,000 to 10,000 area, I don't know, for years, and then started to work its way back. Now it's only back up to about 15,000. So as you can imagine, that decimated many of the citizens in that part of the world's pension plans. But I was trying to find a way to short that market. I thought I could make a little money in it. And even though I worked for a firm that had offices in Tokyo, it was still a nightmare. I mean, I had to open it in Tokyo, had to convert it to yen. It was on options only account. I couldn't get good quotes or feeds, didn't know what was going on. So I passed on it, and of course, it's the one that works out. But the point I'm making is today, if you decided you wanted to sell futures on the Nikkei, you hit a button and you're in a matter of seconds, just like if you were trading futures during the day. It's just amazing to me how this market has evolved. Of course, we didn't have any instruction manuals then. We didn't have anyone to tell us what to do or not to do. We didn't have any moderators, so all of us involved in this market, again, because it was a brand new frontier for trading, if you will, we had to just figure it out as we went. So that's what I have spent since the 1990s doing. I doubt you will meet anyone who's been involved with it longer than I have. You'll meet a couple still out there that have been involved with it as long as I have. But I have been involved with markets, for 37 years, started with Merrill Lynch back in 1977. And I have found that trading in the Globex is one of the most consistent, easier markets to trade. It still makes a lot more sense at night than it does during the day. It's a slower moving market at night, so you have, better opportunities for entries and exits. You can use smaller stops, which I think in today's world that means a lot. We use 2 to 3 point stops. It's a better trending market. And my favorite reason for trading at night, there aren't any high-frequency trading programs that cause the volatility like we see in today's markets. Now, I'm not going to tell you there aren't computers that are operating at night, entering orders, in the various markets that are involved, but they're not these high-frequency trading programs that these quants have developed over the years. The reason you don't have the high-frequency trading programs at night, as most of you know, it takes a tremendous amount of volume. That's how they function. They trade for pennies. They trade in milliseconds. They need a tremendous amount of volume to make those models work, and they just don't have the volume at night like they do during the day. And I have spent most of my Globex life developing trade signals that only work at night, that don't really work during the day. Now, as we spend a few more minutes together, I will tell you or ask you to keep an open mind, because trading in the Globex at night is very different from trading during the day session, even though you're trading the same contract. Now, we predominantly trade the S&P, the E-mini. Occasionally, I'll call a bond trade if I see an opportunity, but that is the majority of trades called during the Globex session. From, like I said, the Globex opens at 5 in the evening. So if you're a true Globex trader, if you believe in the 24-hour marketplace, the 24-hour global marketplace, then your day starts at 5 o'clock in the evening. For example, Thursday's trading will start tonight at 5 o'clock. And then you will trade, if you decide to do so, it will trade around till 3:15 the next day till the close. But in addition to being able to trade in this market, to speculate and trade, as many of you are familiar with, as I said a few minutes ago, it's the only place where you can also hedge. So let's say you go home in the afternoon, you've got a $100,000 equity portfolio, you're happy with it, it's performing, up to your expectations, you're happy with the diversification, and then, as I like to say, something goes bump in the night. Now, don't ask me why this is, but I will tell you that it seems like every time there's some market-changing event that changes global markets or the direction of the market in the U.S., it's something that happens while everyone in the U.S. is sleeping. So we think that gives us a huge advantage. The most current example, obviously, is Brexit, where everyone went to bed in the U.S. thinking when they got up in the morning, Britain will have voted to stay in the EU, only to wake up and find the market was going to be down 600 points in the U.S. European markets were falling out of bed because caught everyone by surprise, and they voted to exit. But the point being is that if there's a change in the markets as you had anticipated them to be, this is the only place that you can run to and hedge your portfolio. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the hedging aspect of it. Just suffice to say that approximately one S&P contract will hedge somewhere about $75,000 in equities, depending, on the volatility of your portfolio. All right. So again, I feel very strongly that even though I trade around the clock, even though I consider myself a decent trader during the day, I just don't get the results like I do at night. I have more consistent returns. It's an easier market to trade, and it just makes a lot more sense. Now, disadvantages of trading at night, I think most of you probably know, is that you have to stay up till all hours of the night for the most part. We know that, and we're aware of it. That's one of the reasons we created a 24-hour room so you could trade when it's convenient to your schedule. You can trade with different moderators with different trading styles. But if you're interested in trading in the Globex, I'll tell you, you don't have to stay up all night. The vast majority of traders that trade with us at night in our chat room, they're usually done by midnight, 10:30 or 11 o'clock. Probably 70% of our trades take place before midnight. After midnight, there's probably about 30% of the folks are still in the room trading with me. And they're usually the Aussies and Australia, Europeans, we have people in Malaysia, because of course it's their daytime, when these markets are trading at night. But you don't have to stay up all hours of the night. We know that you have a life, you have a job, you have a family to take care of. But again, I will tell you that even if you just want to trade a couple of hours in the Globex, from 6 in the evening till 7 or 8 in the evening, it's still a much easier market, a market that makes a lot more sense to trade in than any markets I'm aware of. So again, we're talking about more of when to trade than what to trade, but we trade the E-mini contract, as I said. My philosophy is learn one market, learn it well, and that's what I think we've done. And we're very familiar with the Globex. As I said, I don't think you'll spend any time with anyone who's more familiar with that market than I am. Okay, and that's not bragging. That's, I've just been around a long time and been observing these markets for as long as I can remember. And most recently, I'll give you a good example. Of course, we had July the 4th, and as many of you know, they don't celebrate July the 4th overseas. I know the Brits don't. They're not real fond of it. And Sunday night, the Globex opened at 5 o'clock. It was very thin volume, very difficult, quiet, as you expect. But then Monday night, they closed around 2,100 on the S&Ps. They opened and started to sell off. Then the news broke about the Italian banks that most of you may have been hearing about here of late. Market continued to sell off down into the 2080 range when the U.S. opened. So had you been involved with the Globex Monday evening at 5 o'clock, you could have shorted the market if you had decided to do so and you thought that was the thing to do, which we did do. We have statements to show it. We shorted, in the 2097 range. We didn't quite get 2100, and we held on to the trade and had a nice little evening. And by the time they opened in the U.S. and the U.S. opened down, we had already made our money and got to catch, the easier part of the trade. So again, that's why we think there's a huge advantage to trading at night versus trading during the day. And I will also tell you that if you've been thinking about learning to trade futures, and I've been doing this for a long, long time, I highly recommend you try to learn to trade the futures at night in the Globex. Because again, being a slower market, you don't have the volatility, you can use tighter stops, and it's just a lot easier market to learn. Now, most will say, well, you're using markets like Nikkei and Hang Seng, and I don't know anything about those markets, and you don't have to. All we do is we use those markets as a guideline as to how to trade the S&P, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. All right, so let me pick up a couple of these questions real quick. How many minutes is your average Globex trade entry to exit, John? That's hard to say. Last night I was in a trade for a whole 5 minutes. We shorted 75, got stopped out at 77 3/4. Then we reshorted 2082 later in the evening, and we were in that trade for a couple of hours. So it's going to kind of depend on the market. I can't really tell you that there's an average as to how much we're in an average trade. If I had to guess, somewhere between an hour or 2 hours. John, what chart do you trade from the tick and the minute? John, I use charts during the day, but we do not use charts at night. I've just found that charts at night are just not as productive and not as effective at night, and we've developed other proprietary signals we feel work better. And I'll talk about those as well in just a couple of minutes here. All right, and we have the Greek-isms. Now, as most of you probably have figured out by now, I'm full-blooded Greek, second generation in this country. And Greek-isms is the nickname that the folks in the chat room have given to certain patterns and signals that I have developed over the years that occur in the Globex on a regular basis. And then we have our money management system. Now, guys and gals, I'll talk about this more at length in just a minute. But if you do not have a money management system, a disciplined money management system, you're just not going to have consistent results. I see many a trader who has a disciplined plan for trading, entries, exits, targets, but if you do not have a disciplined money management system, you're just not going to be consistent in your results. All right, and if you'll, I'll catch some more questions here in just a minute. All right, key market times, and this is what's important. This is how it's different trading at night versus trading during the day. At night, you really don't care, or I should say during the regular trading hours, RTHs as most of us call it, you don't really care what the Asian markets are doing unless there's been some kind of unusual news event like a devaluation of the yen or some sort of central bank intervention. But generally speaking, I'm talking about an average night in the Globex. The Asian markets are in control of what the S&Ps are likely to do. So from 5 o'clock in the evening till 12 o'clock Central Time is the Asian control session, as we call it. The markets that control during that time are the Hang Seng and the Nikkei. Now, a lot of you are going to say, why not the Australian markets that are trading during that time frame, or in markets in Thailand or South Korea? Yes, those are important markets, but they do not move the S&P. And our goal is on each and every night, figure out what's moving the S&Ps. If we can figure out what's moving the S&Ps, then we can probably make money from it. Now, on a regular basis, when we don't have Brexit, we don't have a crisis in the Ukraine, we don't have the Greek crisis, we don't have a Lehman event, just normal nights where we don't have some sort of extraordinary news item. Markets from 5 to midnight are Asia. And if you can tell me where the Nikkei is going, that opens at 7, where the Hang Seng is going to go and how it's going to trade, it opens at 8:15. If you can tell me that, then I can tell you which way the S&Ps are going to go. European control. Now, about midnight, traders start to look and anticipate what Europe's going to do, especially now with Brexit. And I will tell you there's a huge opportunity right now because you'll see the Asian markets basically open down, slightly. But when Europe opens, you're getting these big sell-offs, and the S&Ps will drop. So you can short the S&Ps. And then, of course, in the U.S., who knows what's going to happen with the way things have been here in the U.S. We have this market that everybody is aware of, where and I hate this, as a fundamentalist, as someone who's been around the markets for 37 years, when I hear people say you buy U.S. equities because, there's just nowhere else for the money to go, it just drives me crazy, but that's what's going on. Money's scared of Europe, money's scared of Japan, it's scared of a slowing economy in China, and so it just has nowhere else to go, and so it just feels very comfortable here in the U.S. In fact, I don't know if you noticed last week, and I can't remember, and I'm not saying it's never happened, I just don't remember seeing it. Last week, there was so much money flying into the U.S. looking for a home that silver, gold, oil, the dollar, bonds, and equities were all up at the same time. And I can't ever remember seeing a relationship where all those markets went up at the same time like they did several days last week after Brexit and everybody was fleeing Europe, trying to find a safe place to hide their money. And of course, that's why we're seeing the 10-year bond, with unprecedented yields. We all know, I think we figure out that the bond market's a bubble waiting to happen. And, I'm not going to get on my soapbox and talk about these central banks and all this financial engineering that we're seeing day after day, but one of them is going to make a mistake. You mark me on that, and when it happens, it's going to be nasty because you just can't control these markets like these central bankers think they can. Marketplaces just don't work that way. I mean, think about it. If it did, we would never have recessions or economic downturns ever again. Central bankers would just step in and take care of it. And the world doesn't work that way. You know it, and I know it. Now, once you get in the midnight, traders again are focusing on Europe, how Europe's going to open. The controlling markets there are the DAX and the FTSE, especially now the FTSE in London because of the Brexit. So everyone's scratching their heads trying to figure out, what the damage there is going to be. Short term, it looks like there's going to be a slowdown in the global economy, but I think, in my opinion, it was slowing down before Brexit. Brexit's just going to probably add another layer to what that slowdown may look like. China's been slowing down, and stop and really think about it. You really didn't care about manufacturing in China or GDP in China a few years ago. It's a communist country. We know it. It's a closed system that walks and talks like a capitalistic system. But today, if you don't know what's going on in China, you can find yourself trying to trade into a windstorm, if you will. You need to know what's going on in these global markets. And if I leave you with anything today other than this is just a great place to trade, a great market to trade, you need to understand this Globex. You need to understand, at least in basic terms, how it works, even if you're not going to trade in it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in a global economy. We're in a global marketplace. You see what happens when, even when little Greece was having its issues, the way they're managing their economy, you can see how it affected world markets. We are in a global marketplace, and this Globex is a market that you need to, at least in basic terms, to understand. If you believe in the 24-hour marketplace like I do, if you're not paying attention to the Globex, you're leaving 17 hours of the 24-hour trading day of very valuable information on the table. I just can't overemphasize that. All right, I'll pause here for a second. What hours are you referring to as Globex night trading, please? AO, the Globex opens at 5 o'clock. That starts the new trading day. So 5 o'clock this evening, we'll start Thursday's trading, and it trades around the clock till 3:15 Central Time tomorrow. They reopen at 3:30. They trade till 4 o'clock. They shut down for an hour. That's when all the platforms that you're familiar with for trading options set their servers, calculate margin, and what have you. They open back at 5 o'clock, and that's when the day trading starts. And you want to trade for an hour, you want to trade after dinner for a couple of hours, it's up to you. And it's a slower market, it's a quieter market, and I think that it's just the best time in the world if you're a trader to trade. How do we learn that? If you'll expand your question, Kirby, I'll try to, I'm not sure what part in particular you're asking me. John, that is a good question, and if you'll give me a couple of minutes, I'll tell you how we trade at night without charts. Kirby, if you want to learn to trade the Globex, you can join our chat room and you will learn how to trade that market. We have an extensive library and archive that you can study from. And trade with us and learn as you trade. All right, key market times, as I said, are critical to understanding this market because you have markets that open and they can affect how the S&Ps will move at night. For example, a few minutes ago, talking about key market times before Europe opens. Europe opens at 1 a.m. That's when the futures in Germany start trading. The DAX that most of you are familiar with. And you'll start to see a movement in the S&Ps from 12:30 to 1 a.m. in the morning. So that is a time zone that you need to be familiar with. Same with the Nikkei that opens at 7. From 6:30 to 7, you'll see movement in the S&Ps because the S&Ps are trying to determine what these markets are going to do and how they're going to do it. And then, of course, I have spent, to get to John's question, years developing proprietary signals that work in the Globex at night that don't work during the day. So let me give you a couple examples of what that means and what that looks like. First of all, you have to have good resistance and support numbers. And I guess you could say you use charts in which to get those. I generally get those numbers from just watching the market trade to see where the volume comes in, when the markets are moving up, where the buying and the selling starts. And for example, I know right now that 2075 is an important pivot number. I know 2085 is also another one because I can see how the market reacts when they start to trade in these levels, at these levels. So you start off with good resistance and support numbers, knowing your pivot times and which times are best to trade the markets during the course of the evening. You need to pay attention to the international markets. As I said before, you don't particularly follow the Nikkei during the day or the Hang Seng or the DAX, but at night, these are the markets that are going to move the S&P. As I said a few minutes ago, tell me where the DAX is going to go. I'll tell you where the S&Ps are going to go. You watched the DAX last night sell off. The S&P started to sell off right behind it. Now, the key primary market indicator, proprietary signal that we use is a dome. Depth of market is what the dome is for. Some of you refer to it maybe as a matrix. It's that device in which you enter orders on when you're trading. It has, the bid and ask usually at 10 levels. At night, if you know how to read this dome, it's basically a volume indicator. If you know how to read the dome at night, it is the most primary indicator, and I have found that it works reliably at least 80 to 85% of the time. Try to use it during the day, and it's not going to work for you. The dome is most efficient between 5 in the evening and 5 in the morning. Try to use it outside of those hours. It just doesn't work, and it's not an efficient indicator as it is at night. So, John, to answer your question, we're using more of a volume indicator than we are charts at night. And you have to, again, think of it this way. The DAX or the FTSE or the Hang Seng or the Nikkei, depending on the time of night, they're going to affect how the S&Ps move. And if you were going to chart, you'd have to chart the DAX, for example, to figure out what the S&Ps are going to do. And you'll drive yourself crazy trying to chart these different international markets at night. It's just easier to look at the dome, try to figure out which way the DAX and the FTSE are going to trade. In other words, tonight the DAX opened down about 75. Ultimately today it was down almost 200 points. If you see the DAX continuing to sell off, and you look at the dome and you get your volume signals from the dome, you've got your support and resistance numbers, you know your pivot times, then you can find a trade. Okay, Rosa, I believe that is, if I can see that. What time does the DAX open? It opens at 1 a.m. Central Time. And that's a good question, Rosa. When does it stop leading the S&P? Right now, it's more affecting the S&P because of this Brexit and this what's going on in the Eurozone. But typically, between 5 and 6, the DAX will stop leading the S&P. The S&Ps are now going to focus on how the U.S. is going to open. So the S&Ps at that point become the dog that wags the tail. And Vic, you ask, what exactly do we check on the DAX to get E-mini direction? If we can figure out the direction of the DAX, we can figure out the direction of the E-mini. It's just that simple at night, believe it or not. During the day, you could care less what the DAX is doing unless, again, there's some extraordinary event. Kirby, opening an account. Generally speaking, we recommend you have somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 to trade the way we trade in the Globex at night. John, pivot times, and I don't have a slide. There's one in our archives. There are several pivot times at night, but examples are from 12:30 a.m. to 1 a.m., 30 minutes before the DAX opens. There's a pivot at 2:30 after the European cash markets open. Cash markets in Europe open at 2 a.m. There's a pivot from 6:30 to 7 p.m. before the Nikkei opens. There's a pivot time from about quarter to 8 to quarter after 8 before the Hang Seng opens in China. Our European, let's see, O'Leary said he just came on CNBC and said he's buying Europe. You know, you have to remember O'Leary, in my opinion, is a long-term investor, and yeah, he's looking for bargains. We're traders, and I think it's you know, whether you buy Europe tonight, we'll determine that when we're trading Europe later in the evening. But you know, you can't, JD, really compare what O'Leary's doing as a long-term investor looking for bargains to what we do trading the Globex at night. Bill, we do have statements. They're available. If you'll, at the end of this, you can email our support group, and they'll be happy to send you statements of our results. John, they're not necessarily pivots like you mean during the day where you have a reversal, although sometimes that is what those are, but these are key times when the markets are known to move the S&P. Okay. Now, I will not, DOME is depth of market, JD, but you know, different platforms have different names for it. Some call it a matrix. I think Ninja calls it a dome. I'm not sure. Now, we will look at other markets. Well, you know, it's particularly now with all this financial engineering going on. A couple of years ago, this wasn't necessary, but you need to know what these currencies are doing because that will also help you find the direction on the S&Ps. All right, now I mentioned Greek-isms a few minutes ago. Let me give you an example of what some of those are. Again, these are patterns or signals that occur on a regular basis. And in my definition, if I can find an indicator or a signal or a pattern that occurs 80% of the time, then I can make money. So let me give you an example of what a Greek-ism is. It's not an indicator. Our indicators are something different. This is more patterns than anything else. The Monday after options expiration is usually an up day. Now, not day, up Monday morning on the opening. Let me correct that. It could be an up day, but generally it's the first couple of hours. And you say, well, Bill, why is that important? Well, you know, the Globex opens on Sunday night at 5 o'clock in the evening. Our chat room opens at the same time. And let's say you're trading, you know, the S&P. It's Friday, it's Sunday after Friday's options expiration. If you know that there's a high probability that the markets will open up Monday morning and you're short early in the Globex session, then you need to know that there's a place where you probably need to get out of that short and go flat or reverse and go long. And this past Monday, if I'm not mistaken, was an up day. And that's what you normally see after options expiration. They're still squaring off positions. Another one of my favorite trades is, and we see this a lot, where the S&Ps here in the U.S. rally into the close at 3:15. If the S&Ps close near the top tick of the last hour of trading, we call this the overnight short squeeze. It's one of my favorite trade setups. If the S&Ps close near the top tick of their last hour of trading, You carry the position over into the Globex, and you can usually scalp a point or two when the Globex opens and make some money in the first couple of minutes. Particularly when you've had, say, a Friday where you've had a bad employment number like we had when the last number came out at 38,000. They started selling the market off. It caught everyone by surprise and slowly started bringing it back on Friday. They closed it near the top tick of the last hour of trading. You could short it into that close, carry it over till Sunday, and have a nice little trade. Now, there's some 21 of these Greek-isms. Obviously, we don't have enough time to go through them today, but I'm just trying to give an example of what we mean by a Greek-ism. John, you made, I think it's a statement or a question, but yes, volume, well, the S&Ps are attracted by the volume on the dome. John, no, weekly options does not apply to the Greek-ism I just mentioned. So Rosa, yes, I'm talking about the monthly. Okay, money management. If you do not have, as I said earlier, a disciplined money management system, you're just not going to get consistent results. And let me tell you how we approach that in our group. Most of the traders that I know of, and I'm sure this includes yourself, they're looking for additional income. Or you may be trying to trade professionally and live off of your trading. But the majority of folks in our room, they're just trying to supplement their income from whatever source they get it. And the average is looking to supplement their income somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 a month. So what we recommend you do in our money management system is if you join our room, or you do this no matter where you're going to trade, it doesn't really matter. You have to have a disciplined money management system. But when you join our group, we suggest that you set a goal as to what you want to do on a monthly basis to supplement your income. Now, once you set that goal, that backs you into everything else you want to try and do on money management. It determines how many contracts you're going to trade. It determines your risk profile. It determines your stops. So let's take the example of $2,000, and let's say your goal is to make $2,000 a month. That's your goal. Break it down into 20 trading days a month, which is an average. All you have to do, guys and gals, is make $100 a day, and you can reach your goal. Now, some days you're going to lose money. You know it, and I know it. That's why we say average $100 a day. Some nights you might make $200. Some nights you might make $50. Some nights you might lose money. But your goal, if you get my point, is to make $2,000 a month or $100 a day. Now, you don't have to trade 10 contracts to make $100 a day. That's overkill. You can do that by trading 2 contracts. Once you determine your level of contracts, that now becomes a unit. Now, here's what's important, and this is where I see many traders make a mistake. Once you determine your unit, which is your number of contracts you're going to trade within that unit, you never, ever have more than 2 contracts on. How many times have you seen a trader who's a 1-contract trader in the S&P? He says, well, I'm going to sell them up here at 2085. And then he, goes to 2087, so he says, well, if 85 is a good price, 87 is even better. I'll sell a second one. I'll average out. Then they go to 90. He sells a third one. Then 92, and he's a short 4, so forth and so on. Next thing you know, he's short 6 contracts. He's a 1-contract trader. Now he may have a huge loss because the market's continuing to run against him. It happens. He yells uncle. He takes his loss. Then he starts over trying to get back a 6-contract loss with 1 contract. Well, that's just going to be hard to do because you've got to have a lot of consistent trades to get back 6-contract loss with 1 contract. So you have a discipline. Your discipline is you have a unit, and you never, never have more contracts on in your unit at any one time. Now, if your unit is 2 contracts, you can put one on at 85, and if it goes to 87, sell the second one. But that's it. You get stopped out, you're done, you reevaluate, and you start over. So treat it as a job, learn the discipline, learn the process. Just like anything else you try to do, you try to become to a point where when you do it consistently, it almost becomes automatic. Don't overtrade. When you make your goal, you quit. Now, I will tell you that's the hardest discipline for me I've ever had to learn. My goal is to make somewhere between $700 and $1,000 a day. I can't tell you how many times I've reached that goal in the Globex at night, and then I'll keep trading during the day and give some of it back. When you hit your goal, you quit. It's the hardest thing to do that I've ever tried to do, and I consider myself to have a decent discipline. Now this one's probably a head scratcher. Take a weekly or monthly profit from your account. You know, you're sitting in front of a computer. You spend a lot of your hard-earned money. You stare at this computer all night. You tax your emotions. So there's a lot to going into being a successful trader. Reward yourself with a paycheck. That's what we all work for. And I promise you it's reinforcement that will have you do those things over and over and over again that got you that check to begin with. So take a check or a wire from your account on a regular basis. You'll be amazed what it does for you psychologically. All right. Now, someone asked a minute ago where you get the quotes. We provide, we're a Ninja affiliate, but we also provide quotes in our chat room for the DAX and the Nikkei, the different markets you need to watch, which in itself is a bargain because most exchanges now are charging you for quotes, charging you anywhere from $20 to $60 a month. So if you can get these quotes in our chat room, you don't have to pay for them. That can save you, 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks a month. This is what our chat room will look like when you log in. You see the markets over here on the left, the Asian markets, European markets. Then you'll see the trend over on the right. That is a Renko bar chart. Even though I don't call trades off the Renko bar charts, some of our traders still like to use it. All right, so in summary, the system we use, we break it down into key market times. We have our proprietary signals, the Greek-isms, which are patterns and signals, and money management. It's not complicated. It's easy to learn. You don't have to be an international economist to trade this market at night. Trust me, you just don't. We have an extensive library and archive where you can listen to videos and audios at your leisure while you're trading in the chat room, perhaps. You can get our past performance. We have a lot of folks who don't want to stay up at night, and so they like the concept. They just want us to put the orders in for them, so we have a program for that as well. Statements are available for you to get the results. So here's what I'm going to offer you today. You can join the room. Again, it's a 24-hour trade room, so you can get lots of trading in for 30 days. You get access to our library and our archives. You get the useful tools and all the indicators. We don't hold anything back. We don't say, okay, pay us more money and we'll tell you what our indicators are. Everything's available to you. You get the Dr. Frank Stanley's Options 101 course, $47 for 30 days. And here's my guarantee, because someone's going to say, what guarantee do I have? If you don't learn at least one trade signal or one pattern or one process that makes you a better trader, just one, And my attitude is, if I can learn something that makes me a better trader for $47, that's nothing in this business. $47 for 30 days in our trade room to see if it works like I say it does. Access to all of our education. Unfortunately, we just had our first Tuesday last night where we have a 2-hour course on how to learn to trade the Globex. But there are videos and archives or audios that have been recorded that you can listen to. $47 for 30 days. If you didn't learn something in our room that makes you a better trader during that 30-day period, you call me and I'll give you your money back. At the end of the 30 days, you want to stay. It works the way that I have talked about today. It's $147 a month for just about all the trading, all the education that you can possibly use. I doubt very seriously you'll find too many chat rooms that will provide you with the amount of trading and education that we provide for that amount of money. All right, let me go back and grab some of these questions. What do you recommend as stops? John, we typically use somewhere between 2 and 3 points as a stop. The auto execute program cross is $10,000 per one S&P contract that you want us to trade. You set the account up with a broker. Only you can put money in. Only you can take money out. You can also watch us trade live. Statements are available so you can see the results. It's $150 a month. Okay, JD, we look forward to having you in the chat room. Vic, let's see here. Your open hours better than 7-Eleven stores. It is a 24-hour chat room. That's like I say, we think that that's huge, so you can trade when it's a good time for you to do so. John, we do provide you with targets. It just depends on the market. Last night, we had a 3 to 5 target we were shooting for. Harry calls trades in the morning, Ron. He starts about 8:30, about 10. Then Scott comes on after Harry, and then we have John Anders, who does credit spreads on options. He does a great job, has wonderful returns. In fact, they all have great returns. So we have a pretty active room for just about whatever you want to trade. Let's see, when is the room most active? I would say it's most active from 6 in the evening till maybe midnight. And then when Europe opens, the volume picks up. And, of course, when the volume picks up, the opportunities pick up. Where is the company based, JD? I am in Mobile, Alabama. If you run your hand down the Alabama-Florida line down to the Gulf of Mexico, you'll run right over me. Risk reward, John, like I said, we're usually trying to scalp 2 to 3 or 4 points, and we use 2 to 3 point stops. It just depends on the market. Well, Tim, that's not unusual. Tim's statement was, did you know the night market? He didn't know it existed. And that's not unusual. I will tell you that, and I've done this actually. I have a friend whose son is a broker, and we were talking about the Globex one night. And, I asked him if he was familiar with that market. And he said, not really. And he's been in the brokerage business 10 years. I mean, there are a lot of professionals that are not familiar with this market. Call your broker and tell them you want to, not your futures broker now, call your regular broker and tell them, we want to get some information on trading in the Globex, and you're probably going to get a blank stare. Is it possible to download the training tapes? JD, I don't know if you can. I guess you can. They're accessible in our archive. Whether you can download them to your computer, I guess there's a way to do it. I can't tell you how to do it. I've got tech people that might be able to help you do it. JD, you did flight training in Pensacola. Well, I can almost hit you with a softball. I know exactly where you were. If you know where Orange Beach is, that's where I'm in that area. Rosa, are you part of DTI? I was many years ago. It's been about 5 years since I've been affiliated with DTI. Kirby, I guess that's I can't, BH Kirby. I missed it when you talked about the amount that you should have for an account. I would say $3,000 to $5,000, because you need, for the average E-mini account to trade, you need about $500 per contract in which to trade with. So, you could trade it with $2,000, but we recommend $3,000 to $5,000, I think, is best, because you don't want to be in a trade and, get margined out. Look up Dead Doctors Don't Lie. It's too late, Dan. I've already had both knees done. Yeah, I had my first one done 3 years ago. JD, that is, I know that's a little off the subject, but, Orange Beach is one of the most beautiful beaches in the country. It's one of the top 10 destinations, Pensacola, that JD was talking about. And Orange Beach, and that area is beautiful white sand, emerald green water. It's a beautiful place. Jay Greco, what's your typical loss in dollars if 2 to 3 points on a S&P contract? Assuming one contract, you're looking at somewhere between 100 and 150 bucks if we had a loss on a trade. Will any platform work that handles futures? The answer is yes. It doesn't. We don't care where you trade. We don't have a relationship for commissions. Gain Capital, Ninja, Thinkorswim, wherever you want to trade, that's up to you. If you want to trade the auto execute or the managed accounts, we do those through Gain Capital. I personally use Gain Capital to trade in my own account. Yeah, TradeStation, James. I know a lot of platforms raise their margin. I know Gain Capital, where I trade, they went from $1,000 a contract to $5,000 for that few days during the Brexit. Had a lot of people scared. You can't blame them. Is trading at night considered intraday? Yes, it's intraday trading. If you get in a trade at 5 o'clock and you are out of the trade by 3:15 the next day, so in other words, if you enter a trade at 5 o'clock this evening and you're out of it by 3:15 Thursday afternoon, that's intraday. If you carry it past 4 o'clock tomorrow, then you're going to have a margin call as an overnight. Some firms charge more to trade in the Globex than they do regular trading. Gain Capital, I know, is $500 during the day. It's $1,000 at night. How many trades do you personally average? John, let's see. Last night, we had 4 trades last night, and that's probably 3 to 4. But the guys during the day now, they're hitting it. They're in and out, in and out, in and out. The market at night's a slower market, so we're not quite that active. I mean, I'll be honest with you. You know, there are times at night it's like watching paint dry. When we get into the summer doldrums, it can get, pretty quiet. But right now with Brexit, they're keeping it fairly active. Tom, if you will send an email to our support people, the folks that have the statements will be happy to send you the results. All right, any other questions? Yeah. John, our moderators do trade during regular trading hours. Harry starts, I think, about 8:30 in the morning, and then go through till about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Vic, I do not have the answer to the size of the Renko bars. I'm sorry, because I don't really use those at night. But the guys during the day can tell you that they use them extensively. Okay. Dan, sorry if I'm messing you up, but I think I've talked about all I can talk without going too far. And I appreciate your hosting us today. And guys and gals, I appreciate the time we spent together. I hope I said something today that'll help make you a better trader. And for those of you who are interested in trading in the Globex, we hope to see you in our chat room.